materials, cost, workforce, and those kind of things. And it's not that difficult, but it's, it's easy to figure out the project cost. And then, of course, implementation comes with, is the easy part, right? Because you got it all planned. And then, of course, not just monitoring for effectiveness, but learn something from it, and maybe try to adapt your next project to improve. So anyway, just keep that in mind when we talk about projects. Now we're going to look at more of the fun stuff. It's an interesting photo. Anybody can tell me what this is? Do you see where we're at? This is kind of cool. I'll just point out Thunder Mountain out here, and this is Beach Stibnite. Let's see, Big Creek area, okay, and there's Warren. You notice the pattern of these roads and how kind of dendritic it is and open, and look at the density out here. These are roads developed for more or less mining, right? This is all wilderness. This is the Frank Church. But I think it's an interesting pattern. And look where our timber base is, where we harvest timber. And there's a spot right here in the South Fork. This is Cow Creek. This is the confluence there at the C-Stash and the East Fork. A little bit in the middle here is this would be the Camp Creek area on the South Fork, and Blackmere and some of that timber there. But there's a whole history there. The South Fork, that's a whole other program. But there's our timber base, and you can see where our active restoration is right now in the red. And you see the road densities. Well, road densities alone can translate into watershed and fisheries issues, and I could just prove that with a couple slides. But when you have road densities that are 8 to 9 miles of road in 1 square mile, that's pretty heavy road densities. There's places that have more, but there's no way you can have that much road and not affect the timing of the runoff, the quantity of the runoff, the erosion factor. So those are things that really key in on for watershed restoration, especially in an anadromous fisheries drainage where those listed species are, or bull trout. And so that's our emphasis. Where we have proposed timber management projects or vegetation management or restoration projects, whatever you want to call them, there's a need to address some of the road densities out there. And these road densities were built, from the start, back in the brown logging days, here in town, to the heyday was around the 70s. We were building a lot of roads, called jammer roads, where I'll actually show you what that looks like. These are jammer roads. This was state of the art back in the 60s, in the early 70s. You needed to get the logging trucks and close enough, or the skids are close enough to bring it down the road. It looks like contour lines on the map. Well, that's Xena Creek out there in the South Fork, and this is this right here is Brown's logging camp, and this is the C-Stash going down here, and right about this is the South Fork coming in, and the East Fork coming in here, and the mini salmon. So Xena Creek. This actually was a logging study that kind of the soil scientists and the sediment scientists, hydrologists and folks really started looking at roads and sediment issues. And those are one of our biggest concerns in a watershed restoration arena. So we're always looking at those kind of relationships. So you can see roads being a problem. Now, with that said, some of these roads were put to bed and some of them were left alone. The infrastructure's left in place. And what happens is things fall apart. Now, this is just showing the old South Fork Road back before it was paved. You see how strong the inslop this was? You see the cut slopes? This is about a 100-foot cut slope. This is the ditch line. And what would happen is, this is all granitic soil. In a summer rain event, you can get like an inch of rain in an hour, and that's pretty common. And I sat there in one of those storms and watched this rill form. And this is, there's actually a Leatherman tool right there. Do you see that? I don't know if I can zoom in on that, but anyway, there's a Leatherman tool. And this came, this rode right into a ditch line and straight into a culvert and right out into spawning habitat. So this is what the South Fork looked like before it was paved. And one of the reasons why it was paved is to prevent this type of surface erosion. So that was a long story too. I don't know if you guys remember that, Save the South Fork Road back in the 80s. You know, so the Forest Service one actually wanted to make a trail out of this road, you know, for the other half. But Senator McClure back in the 80s secured like $6 million to instead of closing it, to keep the winter access to Yellow Pine and pave the road. And so that was like in '89, I think. He got $6 million on a rider and handed it to the Forest Service, says pave it. And so we spent $14 million on the road. But it's a beautiful road. I mean, it's amazing, well done. It's amazing it's held up so well. And it really addressed the surface runoff. And we have year-round access to Yellow Pine by vehicle. So yes, I mean, there were some really good positive things about it.
I remember driving on it before it was paved, and
Yeah.
the South Fork had sections of like the slimiest clay.
That's it. You bet. I'll show you a picture of that here in a second.
How did that,
There is some
one of
really,
those clays interacted with the paving?
you know, it's really interesting. I mean, I can almost do a whole show on that. But I was hired to monitor the construction of that. It started in 1992, and I came over from the Bitterroot. I didn't really talk about my background beforehand, but I came from the Bitterroot to work on this project called the South Fork Road project. And I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. But I lived out there at Crassel on the road. And I was there 24/7 throughout the construction period. Well, it started in '92. I got there in '93 in March, and been here ever since. But my job was to monitor the construction activity, and where there was erosion, to address it, you know, speak up about it, basically write a report. If it wasn't covered in the contract, I did it myself, and I had a crew that I could work with too. So I put miles and miles of silt fence out there, and lots of erosion control. That's where we've actually started to develop our technique, and it was a pretty well-funded project too. The my other project is after we're done with the paving and stuff during the construction, is to stabilize the 32 miles of cut slopes and fill slopes. And there was a significant amount of work to do that. And the first thing we did is start ordering plants, deep-rooted vegetation, you know, not just grass. And so we had a hydroseeder at our disposal. I'll show you more pictures of that. We'll get into that. But that was a fun project, plus a great learning experience for me. Because the techniques we developed out there on that road project, we were able to take and apply them to all over the forest. And things that kind of worked. And some things that didn't work that we learned from. So.
And where you showed all those roads at Xena Creek, that's the same soil type, right?
Same soil type. You see, it's all one soil type.
Yeah, that's what just moves.
Yeah, it's
unbelievably fast.
decomposed granite. Is
Yeah.
what it is. It's all decomposed granite. It's one of the most erodible type of soils we have. And it's even different than the decomposed granite to the north, where it's a little bit more finer texture. This has a more coarse texture, and it's more erodible than, there's a different erosion index here in the South Fork of the Salmon than it is up in the Clearwater, you know. So it's interesting to know that.
Yeah.
They have other issues though too up there. But so I just wanted to show you some of our system roads that I've come across over time. This is not a stream channel. This is a system road. Doesn't look like it, does it? Matter of fact, I'll put a pointer here. This is kind of fun. Pointer options and color. Let's do this.
That's Pearl Creek Road?
This is, but you know what? That was a good call. It's Outlet Creek, Pearl Creek and Outlet Creek.
Okay.
So you're right, absolutely. That was an excellent call. So north of town, this is after the '94 fires. You know, we were looking at some of the salvage sales up there, looking at these roads and say, hey, what's this stream channel doing in our road? What happens is they came up here, and this is the spruce country where it's just one big block. It's like a big sponge. And they plowed a road open, you know. So this is a big hump right here, and this is a big hump. And so they used a dozer and just plowed a road open. Well, what happens is the landscape, the watershed, flowed across the landscape like this, right? Well, it hit this, you know, it came into the road prism, and it couldn't get there, so it basically, there's multiple little channels that all combined up here, because you go out there and it's just, like I said, a big sponge flowing across the landscape. This is that spruce country. And so the road just intercepted everything. And all these things that tried to flow across the landscape just went down the road and became a stream channel. This is channel intercept and altered drainage patterns. This happens, this is pretty extreme, but this happens almost everywhere where there's a road that doesn't have proper drainage. And, or you have drainage that isn't maintained. And so it's just problematic. Where you're not gonna do road maintenance, you're gonna have problems. And where you abandon roads and leave an infrastructure, you're gonna have problems over time.
Who pays for the repair of these abandoned roads? Does the timber industry contribute any money towards repairing their?
Well, not directly, not directly. Oh, geez, I got lines all over my map. So, not directly. That's a good question. We're stuck with the damage. We're stuck with the damage. Public is.
So they basically come in and take what they want, they leave their mistakes or whatever, and the taxpayer's left to repair
The
that.
taxpayers
mistakes-
subsidized the
Yeah.
roads in the first place.
So the age of this road, you have to look back at the generation. You know, in the '60s and the '70s, man, the public was all for timber harvest. I mean, it was a heyday, and there was a big sort of, we need timber, right? And things got a little out of hand, to tell you the truth. They can't get away with that now. You know, things have changed a lot, but we have a legacy, and that's what we have a legacy road fund, which is a problem to develop with these problems. Now, I didn't say so on the map there, that road map, there is estimated, we don't know for sure, but we know that there's easily 3,500 miles of road that we have listed, and well, we think there's as much as 4,500 miles of road in the forest. So, anybody take a guess how much road maintenance dollars we have?
Very little, I know that.
400 to 500 miles of road. So we're talking 10%, 10% road maintenance funds. So, and they basically have to cover some of our, what we call forest highways, the ones that are, we have 4 levels of road, the level 4, 3 and 4s. Those are like the South Fork Road, the big roads, right? The road going to Hazard Creek, all those big roads. They have to be maintained every year. And then all the level 1 and level 2 roads, those are, level 1s are roads that are closed, that are in storage. Level 2 are roads that are high clearance only, will never see maintenance. And those are the ones we see problems with, not necessarily the 3 and 4 levels. So my job is to put roads, either decommission the roads we don't need and repair the landscape, or stabilize the road for future use and storage. So I'll show you the techniques that we use. These are more examples of channel intercept. This is Clutchin Saddle. You guys know where that is. You know, it's basically channel intercept. I mean, where you have a culvert that plugs up and the water goes down the road. And this erosion will end up in the stream channel where there's spawning habitat. So the other big problem with roads is the disconnect with the fisheries. You know, this is a major problem, and we are addressing that systematically. Interesting enough, well, we did a quick survey. There's been really a lot of developments in the Northwest, and it's a big movement the past 15 years to upgrade culverts for fish patches, aquatic organism passage, AOPs. That's what they call them. So 75% of our culverts that have fish present don't pass fish at some life stage. So you think about maybe a big fish could get up that culvert and swim through that, you know, but little fish can't. So we are systematically addressing these and a priority. Places, people like the Nespers Tribe, great partners for this. They've done an amazing amount of work. They actually started in Clearwater and has a pretty well-established program here on the Fayette now. And they fund a lot of, and that money comes from actually BPA for damming the dams. right? Damming the dams, damming the rivers.
Damn.
So there's,
Damn dance.
it's funny how it comes around. But we also have these big natural events. Believe it or not, this is all a natural event. The only problem with this this is what like, you know, fluvial geomorphologists and soil scientists and everything would call this a channel reorganizing event. You know, it's basically a debris torrent, right? It happens, and it's actually fire and flood on the South Fork. That's how things develop. You know, recruiting materials and materials to the river. This is actually a necessary natural process. We can't really prevent that. What we can prevent is when it, you know, this is when it hits a roadbed. It becomes a roadbed reorganizing event, you know, and you see the culvert right there? So that's a roadbed. And that's where this big thing came down, the channel. This is actually a stream crossing here. And the culvert is probably about 35 feet below this big pile of slash and debris. And so this is a road, Buckhorn, up in the South Fork. And we had to go in there and clean this out. We actually, instead of rebuilding this road, this is an old logging road, and we knew we weren't gonna log there anymore, we built a trail out of it. And it's a great trail, by the way. It's really fun to build. Did that 15 years ago. So there's another crossing. Kind of studying, figuring, okay, how are we gonna do this? And where's that culvert, by the way? I wish I would have had it. There's a picture I had of a culvert down below me, like 30 feet. And when we went down and got that culvert out, we realized there was another one underneath it. And that was from the 1974 flood. This was the 97 flood. And so what they did back in 1974, instead of digging that old one out, they just put a new one on top of it. And we didn't even know it was there. It's kind of interesting. So, you know, these are episodical. Every, 64, 74, 97, these things happen, these big rain on snow events. And when I say rain on snow event, is basically what we're doing, what it is at a certain elevation, there's a snowpack in the wintertime. We have this big Pineapple Express that comes up here, usually around Christmas time or New Year's Day, and it rains. And it's warm rain on the snowpack. And at a certain elevation, let's say about 4,500 feet, there's enough snowpack to absorb all this warm rain. And it will hold. It'll be really wet and heavy, but it'll hold. But everything below 3,500 feet, or 4,500 feet, will basically liquidate. And it will liquidate the side of the mountain and drainage, especially if there's happen to be a burned area on it. You know, that one picture I showed you, so it was Savage Creek out in Elk Creek of the South Fork, and it blows. And that's a natural event. There's nothing you can do about that, but get your infrastructure out of the way, you know. So this is just the Buckhorn Trail back in the 99. What I want to show you here is here we are reshaping the road, outsloping it, trying to get, there's a top of the cut slope. We're trying to actually get to the very top and get full recontour, but some places just aren't practical for this. You can see how wide this thing is. And we built a trail over it. This is our little hydroseeder we had at the time. Actually our small one. This is a little 500-gallon Bodie. And so we sprayed it with hydroseed and got this mix figured out that we really liked. And there it is, browning. I mean, this basically snow's melting in the springtime. But 1 month later from this picture, from April to May, the soil temperature's warmed up. And there's the kind of generation we have. You can almost see everything. So hydro mulch mix is, you know, pretty cool. But I'll show you some secrets to some of our, I'll show you some secrets. So what really works in it. So here's places where we left infrastructure in and plugs up. You know, culverts plug, right? Debris falls down, sticks and things like that will plug a culvert pretty quickly. Especially if you got two culverts in a row, like what happened here. This is actually up at Kinley Creek. Not Kinley Creek, but yeah, Kinley Creek. Right by Patty Flat. This is out in 4 Mile in New Meadows. This is in Boulder Creek, where we have a 6-foot hole in the ground. There's a road going over there, and they left behind an old log culvert. You know, from those things don't last geologically. Matter of fact, they don't even last 20 years. And so, yeah, sure, they're gonna rot out, right? So when you leave infrastructure behind, things like this happen. But we find these things with no fill, and so these are gonna be, you know, these are high priority to get these taken care of, and where we have abandoned roads, we need to take care of the infrastructure to prevent that from happening. I'm going to show you more slides if we have time of this. There's a whole case scenario on this particular cut slope.